Welcome. Two shadows never sleep. Here night never ends. And every story hides something waiting to be found. From haunted houses buried deep in forgotten American towns, to Halloween nights that went horribly wrong, and old legends whispered by those who claimed they saw something right before the lights went out. So sit back, turn off the lights, and let the shadows tell you what they've been keeping. I remember the sound before I remember the night. A hollow clang, like metal, striking something wet, echoing faintly through the trees. The sound still finds me sometimes, when the wind moves through pine, or when rain hits a roof the wrong way. It takes me back to that night in the Swedish woods, when I thought camping would bring us closer. Instead, it broke something I can't fix. We had driven 6 hours north of Stockholm, my sister and I, in an old red Volvo packed with borrowed camping gear and half the wrong food. She was 17, restless, and always humming whatever song was trapped in her head. I was 22, exhausted from work and craving silence. The woods offered it, or so I thought. By the time we reached the campsite, the sun was already bleeding into the horizon, gold turning gray. The lake below looked like a sheet of glass, still and perfect. There were only 2 other tents when we arrived, both empty, their flaps open, like someone had left in a hurry. I remember thinking it was odd, but convincing myself it was fine. People left tents behind sometimes, maybe for a hike, or maybe because they'd return later. The air smelled like pine, rain-soaked earth, and something faintly metallic. We pitched our small blue tent near a clearing, just far enough from the water to stay dry. That first evening was calm. My sister Sophia roasted marshmallows while I tried to light a stubborn fire. She laughed when smoke hit her face, and the sound echoed against the trees. Soft and human, in a way that made the forest feel alive. But when the last light drained from the sky, something about the silence changed. It became heavier, denser, the kind that presses into your ears until even your heartbeat feels loud. Around 10 p.m., we saw headlights in the distance, faint, weaving between trees, like a lost animal. A car, far too deep in the woods. It moved slowly, its engine muffled, almost cautious. I remember how Sophia stopped mid-sentence and just watched. The car passed along the far dirt road and vanished. No engine after that, no sound of doors. Just gone. We tried to laugh it off, joked that someone was lost, or maybe just looking for a place to park and watch stars. But I caught her glancing at the tree line more than once after that. The forest has a way of making you feel watched. At midnight, the rain began, soft at first, then steady, tapping the fabric of our tent like fingers drumming. We were inside, our sleeping bags zipped tight. I could hear her shifting beside me, restless, whispering something about needing to pee, but being too scared to go out. I teased her, but I didn't really want her to go either. The dark outside felt thick, almost physical. That's when we heard it. It came from somewhere far, or maybe close. Distance is strange in forests. A sound can bounce between trees and lose itself, but it was clear enough to freeze both of us. A scream, not sharp like a startled cry, not long and high like in movies. This one was raw, broken, like someone had been screaming for a while, and their voice had started to tear apart. It carried through the rain, caught in the wind, then faded. We stared at each other. Sophia mouthed something. "Did you hear that?" I nodded. We didn't speak aloud. It felt like making sound might invite something to answer. After maybe a minute, I unzipped the tent just enough to look out. The rain had eased. Mist moved like smoke above the soil. The trees were black silhouettes, swaying slightly. Nothing. No flashlight beams, no voices. Just the forest, empty and endless. Sophia whispered, "Maybe someone's hurt." Her voice trembled. I wanted to agree, to sound brave, but there was something wrong with that scream. It didn't sound like a single person. It had an echo, almost layered, like more than one throat trying to make the same sound. I told her to stay put, zipped the tent again, and listened. That's when we heard the metal again. A distant clang, 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 slow, uneven. It reminded me of someone dragging a shovel against stone, or a gate slamming in wind. It came from somewhere beyond the tree line, near the abandoned tents. Sophia clutched my arm and whispered, "Let's go. Let's leave." I told her it was probably just the wind, a stupid thing to say, but it felt like we needed words to fill the silence. Then, a new sound joined. Footsteps. Wet, deliberate. The crunch of leaves under heavy boots. They circled the tents, not running, just walking, slow enough that you could count each step. One pass, then another. I held my breath. Sophia's hand was trembling in mine. Whoever it was stopped near our tent door. I could see a faint shadow shift across the fabric. Someone tall, standing there. The air felt suffocating. The rain had stopped, but droplets slid from the trees and hit the roof with tiny, betraying sounds. Then came the whisper, faint, hoarse, but real. "I can hear you." My blood turned to ice. I didn't know if it was a man or a woman. The voice sounded wrong, stretched, like the throat making it wasn't working right. I clamped my hand over Sophia's mouth. She was shaking violently now. For a full minute, maybe longer, we sat frozen. The shadow outside didn't move. Then came the soft scraping metal on fabric, a sound like a knife tip tracing the edge of the tent. My heart was hammering so loud, I thought it might give us away. Then the shadow moved away. Footsteps, slow again. Then a car door slamming shut somewhere far off. Then silence. I don't remember sleeping. I don't think we did. Every rustle felt like a threat. Every drop felt like movement. We stayed curled together until faint light started filtering through the tent walls. At dawn, I unzipped the flap. The forest was washed in pale fog. The ground was wet, the air cold enough to sting my nose. I stepped out, expecting nothing, or maybe everything. The footprints were still there, dozens of them, some leading from the trees, some circling our tent. But the worst were near the old empty tents we'd seen when we arrived. There, the ground was torn, like someone had dragged something heavy through mud. The second tent had collapsed. Its zipper was broken, hanging open like a wound, and that metallic sound, it wasn't the wind. Beside the tent lay a rusted shovel. The blade was dark, wet, and half buried in the soil. Sophia stood behind me, whispering my name. But I couldn't answer, because just beyond that, at the edge of the clearing, I saw something else, a black car, parked sideways among the trees, half hidden by brush, the same one we'd seen the night before. The driver's door was still open, and from inside, faintly, almost too faint to be real, came another sound, a single, muffled scream. The sound from the car was faint, almost imagined, like the echo of a dream that didn't want to fade. I remember standing there, half inside the fog, half outside of myself, trying to decide if I was hearing a person or something else entirely. Sophia whispered behind me again, asking what it was, but I didn't answer. I couldn't. The air had that strange stillness before a storm, the kind that hums beneath the skin. I took a slow step toward the car. Each foot sank slightly into wet soil, the ground heavy with last night's rain. The closer I got, the more I could see. Mud splashed across the doors, scratches running down the side as if branches or hands had dragged along it. The open driver's door creaked softly in the wind. Inside, darkness. The smell hit me first. Wet fabric, rust, something faintly chemical, like gasoline and iron. I leaned closer, enough to see the faint glint of a rearview mirror, the reflection of trees swaying above. That's when it came again, muffled, desperate, the sound of a voice trying to scream through something thick. I stumbled back. Sophia gasped behind me, clutching my jacket. Her voice cracked when she whispered, "Someone's in there." We stood frozen. The car sat unmoving, silent again except for a faint ticking noise from the engine. I tried to look inside the back seat, but the windows were fogged from the inside. That was the part that made my chest tighten. The condensation wasn't from rain. Someone had been breathing in there recently. I told Sophia to stay put, though she clung to my arm. I walked around to the passenger side, squinting through the glass. A blanket lay crumpled on the seat, something dark soaked into it. The glove box was open. On the dashboard, a small silver keychain glimmered in the pale light, a metal cross, swinging slowly, like it had been moved moments ago. Sophia's voice trembled. We should go now. But I couldn't move, because behind that fogged window, something shifted. A faint outline pressed against the glass, leaving the shape of a handprint, small, delicate, trembling. A child's hand. I stumbled back, heart pounding so hard, I felt it in my throat. The sound came again, a muffled cry, shorter this time, like whoever was inside couldn't get air. I reached for the door handle without thinking. It was locked. I pulled harder. Nothing then. A rustle, a branch, snapping deep in the woods to our right. We both turned. The trees swayed, but there was no wind. Another sound followed, a wet, dragging shuffle. Sophia whispered, "It's someone coming." Panic took over. I grabbed her hand and pulled her toward our tent, tripping over roots and slick leaves. We half ran, half stumbled back into the clearing. Everything looked the same, and yet wronged. The color of the forest felt drained, the light pale and cold. I didn't realize until later that the birds had gone silent. When we reached our tent, Sophia was crying quietly, trying not to make noise. I told her to pack, to grab whatever she could. My hands shook so badly I could barely roll the sleeping bags. Every sound felt amplified, the zip of the tent, the whisper of fabric, the dull thud of my heartbeat. Then, the sound again, clang, clang, slow, deliberate. It wasn't echoing anymore. It was closer. Sophia froze, staring at me with wide eyes. I mouthed for her to stay quiet. The sound came from somewhere near the car now, metal against metal, a dull rhythm that didn't belong in morning air. I peered through the trees. The fog was thicker there, curling low like smoke. I could still see the car's outline. The driver's door was closed now. The handprint was gone. That's when I saw it, movement behind the car, a figure shifting in and out of fog, tall, wearing something dark and wet. I couldn't make out a face, only the glint of something metallic in one hand. The sound clang came again as the figure dragged it against the car's hood, slow and almost curious. Sophia made a tiny sound, barely a whimper, but it was enough. The figure stopped, turned its head toward us. I don't remember deciding to run. My body moved before my mind did. We bolted through the trees, branches whipping at our arms, our breath catching in ragged bursts. The ground was slick. Twice, Sophia slipped, and both times I yanked her back to her feet. I didn't dare look behind. I just heard it, the sound of leaves crunching somewhere far too close. After what felt like forever, we reached a narrow dirt path, barely visible through undergrowth. I recognized it from the map near the lake. It led toward the main road about 3 kilometers away. We ran. The forest seemed endless, the mist thickening until it blurred everything into gray. After maybe 15 minutes, the sound behind us stopped. No footsteps, no metal, only our gasping breaths and the distant croak of frogs near the water. We slowed, just enough to listen. Sophia whispered, "Do you think he's gone?" I wanted to say yes, but before I could, we heard the faintest noise, click, 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 like someone flicking a lighter. The sound came from ahead this time, somewhere deeper down the path. We both froze. I turned slowly, scanning the trees. Nothing moved, but there was light now, a dim, orange flicker, just beyond a bend, a fire. Someone was there. We moved cautiously, trying to stay silent. When we reached the turn, I saw a small clearing ahead, a ring of stones, a fire smoldering low, and an old man sitting beside it. He wore a faded green jacket, hood pulled low, hands stretched toward the flames. A small backpack lay beside him, a hunting knife strapped to his belt. He looked up as we stepped into view. His eyes were pale, almost colorless. For a moment, none of us spoke. Then he said, in a voice that rasped like dry leaves, "You shouldn't be here." Sophia blurted, "Please. We need help, someone's chasing us. There's a car, someone's screaming." The man didn't react. He just kept staring, as if he hadn't heard. Then he slowly turned his gaze toward the path we'd come from. "Did you see them?" he asked. "See who?" I said. He didn't answer right away, just poked at the fire with a stick. Sparks rose and vanished into the mist. Finally, he said, "They come every few years. Not the same ones, but the same kind. The forest keeps them." Sophia's voice shook. "What are you talking about?" The man stood slowly. He was taller than I expected, his coat stained dark at the hem. "You should go back to the road," he said. "Don't stop. Don't talk to anyone until you see power lines." Before we could ask more, he kicked dirt over the fire, killing the light. Smoke curled up, gray against gray. "If you hear the scream again," he said softly, "don't look back. That's how it finds you." Then he turned and walked into the woods, disappearing like he'd never been there. For a long moment, we just stood, staring at the spot where the fire had been. My hands were shaking. Sophia was whispering under her breath, repeating "don't look back" like a prayer. We started walking again, faster this time. The forest felt alive around us, every branch shifting, every shadow breathing. After maybe another kilometer, the mist began to thin. I could see the faint shimmer of sunlight filtering through the canopy. Relief began to creep in until I heard it again. That same scream, closer this time, and underneath it, the sound of a car engine starting. Sophia clutched my arm. "No, it can't be." We ran. My legs burned. My throat felt raw. The road had to be close. I could almost see the clearing ahead, a sliver of sky through the trees. Then the engine roared louder, tires against gravel, a car coming fast from somewhere behind the bend. We reached the edge of the forest just as it appeared, a black car. The same one, headlights off, speeding down the dirt track toward us. The windows were still fogged. The driver's face was hidden behind glare, but the car wasn't slowing down. I grabbed Sophia and dove to the side as it swerved past, missing us by inches. The tires sprayed mud and water. The car skidded, straightened, and then vanished into the trees ahead. For a few seconds, all I could hear was my pulse, then silence again. Sophia was sobbing now, not from pain, but shock. I held her, looking down the road. There were no tracks where the car had gone, just wet soil, untouched, as if it had never passed. We stood there until the mist began to lift completely. In the distance, I saw the faint line of power poles cutting across the horizon. Civilization, safety. We walked, silent, shaking, too afraid to speak. When we finally reached the main road, I turned one last time toward the forest. From here, it looked peaceful again. Sunlight breaking through the canopy, birds chirping faintly, almost beautiful. But then, I saw something glinting in the mud near the edge of the trees. I walked closer. Despite every instinct, screaming not to, it was the same silver cross from the car's dashboard, dangling from a small key. It was wet, but not with rain. And just as I picked it up, somewhere deep within the trees, the scream came again. This time it sounded like my sister. For a second, I couldn't move. My sister was right beside me, trembling, her breath short and uneven. But that scream, the one that came from the forest, had been hers. It wasn't just similar. It was exact. The pitch, the tone, even the way her voice cracked at the end. I felt her fingers tighten around my wrist, but I couldn't look at her. My brain couldn't hold both truths at once, that she was standing next to me, and that her voice was echoing from somewhere deep in those woods. The sound died as suddenly as it came. No echo, no wind after. Just silence. A silence so heavy, it made the world feel hollow. Sophia was whispering something under her breath, too fast for me to catch. I think she was praying. I wanted to say something to calm her, but my throat felt sealed shut. The keychain in my hand was still wet, cold against my skin. I stared at it, wondering why it felt heavier than before, like something inside the tiny metal cross was pulling downward. A faint hum seemed to come from it when I held it close. Maybe just my heartbeat echoing through my fingers. Maybe something else. We have to leave, Sophia said finally. Now, we can't stay here. I nodded, but the road ahead stretched empty, endless in both directions. To the right back toward the small town where we'd fueled up yesterday. To the left, deeper into the forested back roads that led nowhere on the map. I chose right. We walked for nearly an hour. The morning sun never seemed to brighten, just hovered behind a thin veil of clouds. The air felt wrong, too still, too damp. The forest never really left us, even from the road. The trees leaned close on both sides, whispering in a language only they knew. Every so often, I thought I heard footsteps behind us, slow, deliberate, matching ours. When I stopped, they stopped. When I walked again, they followed. I told myself it was the echo of our boots, the way sound bounces between trees. But Sophia heard it too. Her eyes kept darting to the side mirrors of parked cars we passed, scanning for movement. Around noon, we reached a wooden sign half buried in mud. Most of the letters were worn away, but the few that remained read something like Grandskog Trail. I didn't remember it from any map. A small gravel lane branched off from the main road there, leading to what looked like an old cabin or ranger post in the distance. Smoke rose faintly from its chimney. Sophia hesitated. Maybe someone's there. Maybe they can help. I wanted to keep moving, but the thought of being on the road, exposed and watched, was worse. We turned down the path. The ground was soft, covered in damp moss that muffled our steps. The closer we got, the stronger the smell of smoke became. Wood fire, mixed with something else. Something earthy, metallic. The cabin was small, built from dark logs with a slanted roof. A single window looked out toward the path, curtains drawn tight. The door was slightly open. A stack of chopped wood sat beside it, freshly cut. I knocked softly. No answer. Hello? My voice sounded strange, distant. We waited. The only sound was the slow creak of the door, moving in the wind. I pushed it open. The interior was dim, lit only by the glow of a small fire in a stone hearth. Dust floated in the air like drifting snow. The smell of burning pine filled the space. The smell of burning pine filled the space. There was no one inside, at least. Not that we could see. The room was small, a table with 2 chairs, a metal kettle, shelves lined with jars of something dark. A single lantern sat on the counter, still warm. Someone had been here minutes ago, Sophia whispered. This doesn't feel right. I walked to the table. There were papers spread out, old maps covered in markings, red circles, lines connecting points. One circle marked a spot near where we had camped last night. Another was drawn right here, Grandskog Trail. And there, scrawled at the bottom of the page, were 3 words in shaky handwriting. Do not answer. A floorboard creaked behind me. I turned. Nothing. Just the empty doorway, the fog pressing against it like a living thing. Sophia had gone pale. Someone's outside, she whispered. I moved to the window, pulling back the curtain just enough to see. At first, nothing but mist. Then a shape, tall, motionless, at the edge of the trees. It wasn't close enough to make out a face, just standing there, watching the cabin. Sophia backed away from the window. I let the curtain fall. Don't move, I said quietly. Don't look out again. She nodded, tears already welling. We waited. Minutes stretched into an hour, or maybe less. The fire crackled softly, each sound too loud in the silence. I tried to keep my breathing even. The figure outside didn't move. Not once. Just there, a dark mark against the pale gray world. Then the phone rang. I jumped. There was an old rotary phone sitting on a shelf near the door, the kind that shouldn't even be working this far from town. It rang again, a shrill metallic sound that didn't belong in this place. Sophia grabbed my arm, shaking her head, whispering, "Don't answer." I didn't want to. Every instinct screamed against it, but it kept ringing, over and over, each shrill note slicing through the air. Finally, I lifted the receiver, my hand trembling. "Hello?" At first, just static. A low, distant hiss. Then a voice, faint, distorted, but familiar. It was Sophia's. "Don't stay there," it said. "He's behind you." My breath caught. The voice faded into static again, and the line went dead. I turned slowly. Sophia was standing right in front of me, her real self, eyes wide, shaking. She hadn't spoken. She hadn't moved. The sound of footsteps came from the porch outside, slow, heavy, deliberate, the same rhythm we'd heard circling the tent that night. Sophia's eyes darted toward the door, then toward me. We both backed up until our shoulders hit the far wall. The handle turned once, a soft click. Then nothing. I held my breath. The firelight flickered. Shadows moved across the walls, long and crooked. Then the door swung inward an inch, creaking. The smell of wet earth swept in with the cold air, but no one entered. The sound of breathing came from just beyond the threshold, low, uneven. A whisper followed, barely audible. "You shouldn't have answered." I froze. My fingers dug into Sophia's arm. The whisper came again, closer this time, almost against the doorframe. "I can hear you." Something shifted outside, a footstep moving away, then another, then silence. I didn't move for a long time. When I finally dared to look through the crack of the door again, the fog was gone. So was the figure. The forest stood quiet, motionless, pretending nothing had happened. We left the cabin as fast as we could, following the path until it met the main road again. The light was fading now, the gray sky sinking into blue. Sophia hadn't spoken since the phone call. She just kept walking, her eyes unfocused, whispering the same thing under her breath over and over. "Don't answer, don't answer, don't answer." By the time we saw the first house, a small wooden home with a mailbox and a blue bicycle leaning against the fence, it was almost dark. Relief hit me like a wave. I ran to the door and knocked. A woman answered, middle-aged, kind face, hair tied in a loose braid. She smiled at first, until she saw our faces, the mud, the fear, the exhaustion. "Are you all right?" she asked, switching to English when she saw our expressions. I told her everything, or tried to. The car, the scream, the man in the woods. She listened quietly, her eyes flicking once toward the forest behind us. When I mentioned the cabin, her hand tightened on the doorframe. "That cabin," she said slowly, "no one lives there anymore. It burned down 3 years ago." I blinked at her, unable to process. "No," I said, "it's there." We were inside. There was a fire, a phone. She shook her head. "It's gone." Sophia started to cry again, quietly, the sound breaking whatever part of me was still holding together. The woman hesitated, then opened the door wider. "Come inside," she said softly. "You shouldn't be out here after dark." We stepped in. The warmth of her house felt unreal, like stepping into a photograph. The smell of bread and wood, the faint hum of an old radio. She led us to the kitchen, poured tea, and called the local police. I sat at the table, staring out the window into the forest. For a moment, I thought I saw it again, that black car, parked half hidden behind the trees. But when I blinked, it was gone. The woman placed a blanket around Sophia's shoulders, speaking gently to her in Swedish. I could barely hear. My mind was still back at the cabin, replaying the sound of the phone. That voice, her voice, saying those words. And in the quiet of that warm kitchen, As the woman spoke on the phone and Sophia stared blankly into her cup, I noticed something on the wall above the table. A photograph. Old, faded, in a wooden frame. It showed the same woman, younger, smiling, standing beside a man in a forest clearing. Behind them, just barely visible, was the same cabin, and parked beside it, the same black car. By dawn, the forest looked harmless, again mist curling softly over the moss, sunlight catching the river, where the screams had echoed hours before. The tents were gone, the ground flattened, as if no one had ever been there. When the police arrived, they found no car tracks, no footprints, not even a torn branch. But the sisters still hear it sometimes, in the rush of wind through pine trees. A single, distant scream that always ends with the sound of running. And every time it comes, they know someone else just wandered too deep into those woods.